James, thank you very much for joining Guy and I on the Damhurst podcast.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So I think it would be really useful for our listeners if you could start by giving us a brief overview about how you came into the insurance market and your journey to date.
So I'd probably be lying if I said that I dreamt as a 5-year-old and 10-year-old that I wanted to be an insurance broker when I grew up. Probably didn't even really know what an insurance broker was then. It started really when I first took a position with Tysers. Actually, before I was 16, I did work experience there. Okay. It was the year 10 mandatory thing to do. Then you do 2 weeks work experience at a company of your choice. And I was unsure where I was going to do it. And my uncle, John Lucas, he worked at Tysers at the time. And we was having a lunch one day and he said, I said I didn't know what I was going to do. I'll probably end up maybe just doing a paper round or something for my work experience. And he suggested, actually, why don't you come and work in Tysers and do 2 weeks there? And that sounded great to me, going to work in the city. He'd mentioned Lloyd's of London and I thought that was Lloyd's bang. There was lots of conversations then, and we spent most of the lunch. I was getting quite excited, and that's where it started. So I did my work experience with the guys, and then I went back to school to do my GCSEs, and I really enjoyed my time. But that was it. I'd moved on. The plan was I would go to college. Maths was my subject then, so I was focused heavily on that. And then just after I'd taken my GCSEs, my mum got a phone call. I don't know if it's because I didn't have a phone then, or maybe I had a home phone only, I don't know. Landline. My mum got a phone call and it was somebody at Tysers. It wasn't my uncle at that time, it was somebody else at Tysers, and they decided they needed some help over the 6 weeks holiday. They was really happy with what I did in the 2 weeks, which I was surprised about, but they was very, very happy. And that's what I did. I went to go and work there for 6 weeks. But then as we was approaching the end of the 6 weeks, I think I'd probably built to the point where I actually had a full-time job at the company, and they probably at that point couldn't live without what I was doing at the company, and so they offered me a full-time role. The decision was, do I go to college and do maths? So at that time, I think I'd vaguely decided I was going to be a lawyer, or wanted to be a lawyer, or a doctor. Two very different industries, but that was what I was deciding I was going to do, I wanted to do. But ultimately, I decided that actually I really enjoyed where I was. I was enjoying being with the people. I enjoyed the city. I enjoyed the culture. There wasn't many other 16-year-olds, but it was something I enjoyed doing, and decided to do it full time.
Oh, and at that point, I mean, how quickly were you allowed out into the market, kind of broking, or did you have to wait a bit in order to do that? Because 16 is quite young.
16 is, yeah, it was. I mean, I had some nicknames in the company, all sorts of nicknames then you're allowed to have.
What's the most appropriate?
Yeah. Fetus. That was one of my nicknames, the Fetus. It was great. It was all friendly, and it was. But I'm not the tallest. This is why it's good that we're sitting down here. So as a 16-year-old, I probably looked like a 12-year-old, to be honest. That bit was probably the slowest part of my development. I think I came in at 16. As I said, my job was a junior. My roles was it really was, I made cups of tea. Yeah. I mean, I make a mean tea now as well still. I bet. I used to greet clients at the front door. I used to send the post out. I used to go and collect the post. I would do anything that sort of the older generation didn't quite know how to do on computers. It was all those sorts of jobs that really other people didn't want to do, and that was what I did. And actually, they're important jobs. Yeah. Every company needs to have. Every job in a company is important, I believe. And at that company, okay, those roles are not really there so much anymore. But I believe my role in the company was important. I built the bit was probably most important was the greeting the clients. Because it was just meet them at the ground floor, bring them up in the lift, sit them down in the meeting room, make them a cup of tea. Yeah. And that was about it. But as time went on, I wanted to do a bit more than that. It was a bit awkward. And so I would learn the client's file before he came in. I'd read the file and so I've got a bit of an idea what was going on. And, when they're in, I could talk a bit to them about the business. And I don't know if they was impressed or not, but it actually, when I stopped greeting the clients, when I'd been promoted from greeting the clients, some would ask, where's James? Is he? Yeah. He's not. So I think it was important for the clients. I was sort of front of house really at that point. So that was good, but I didn't really get out into the market until we'd moved to Channing Lucas and Partners, I would say.
Okay.
It was sort of on the edge of when we was at Tysers, and then we moved to Channing Lucas and Partners, and it was all hands to the pump, and that was when I really got out into the market.
And that was sort of 5 years in.
That was 5 years in, yeah. We started in 2007 at CLP, so...
And that's quite an interesting, thing to have happened early on. So what the history of that Channing Lucas just kind of split away from Tysers, or?
Yeah, we was a division. So we was
Yeah.
actually the Marine Channing division.
Yeah.
Okay.
Within Tysers, and it was there was other directors as well as John and Lou, but they decided that they was going to start their own company. I can't actually tell you too much about that because that was what they did.
Yeah.
I was the youngest still. I was still just about more than a junior. I think I might have been called technician at that point, but I was 21. I actually had an offer to stay at Tysers,
Okay.
which I really did consider. But in the end, I decided to go along, and they decided, I guess, that it was an opportunity, an entrepreneurial move. I think really this is where you nature and nurture. I was lucky to be in an environment with entrepreneurs from a young age. These guys, not a lot of people start their own company, and I was around this at 21 with people taking this leap.
Yeah.
And so that to me it was normal. So it didn't feel scary doing what I did in the future.
How big was the company when
It was 8 people at first.
Okay, wow.
It was 8, and everybody mucked in. It was, you had to, if there's something need doing it, there's not, there's a department for that, or speak to this person, they'll help you. It was, well, okay, if that needs doing, go and do it then. So, that was where I learned. I learned so much in those first few years because I was the one that got a lot of the sort of jobs that other people didn't want to do. Setting up the claim system, inventing how the filing system, still we use it today, how we do it. Just the general, looking at logos for the company and so a lot, and the computer systems, how we're going to use the computer systems, the software we might use, all of those sorts of jobs are you're heavily involved with, and it's learning other skills that you can't really learn unless you're in it.
Yeah. And was it 2007, 2008, that was an interesting time globally with the financial crisis.
Yep.
Did that, I know insurance is somewhat immune to that, but was there talk about that around the office, about the timing?
There was, absolutely. Insurance does tend to be insulated a lot of the time because people still need to buy insurance. But a lot of the time, the amount of people buying insurance as industry and trade goes down, the amount of insurance being bought is less. There was definitely talk and definitely concerns going on. But again, it's that bravery that they still did it. And that's, I think a lot of that is printed in me. I'm still around entrepreneurs now. That's, so I think that's it was a good thing really for me. I wasn't the one taking the risk at that point. I took a risk in fact that I left one job to go to another.
Yeah. But
really they took the financial risks and the ward and the reputational risk and they went ahead with what they believed in and it worked out a success.
I think they say if you can build a company in the bad times, then it's just so much easier when the good times come.
Absolutely.
Because you've to your point, you've rolled your sleeves up.
You've done it at the hardest.
You've done it at the hardest point in the market cycle. It's really, and so how's your since that time where you were kind of in Channing Lucas and Partners, you were 21. How can you just sort of talk us through how your kind of story, how your career has evolved over the last couple of decades or so?
Of course, yeah. So once we started at CLP, it was doing every job as I said. Naturally, the company started to grow. Some experienced brokers came in. We probably had a broking team of 5 or 6 at that time. I'd been asked to join the broking team because there was just demand for it, and also I must admit I was knocking on the door the whole time, constantly. I want to be a broker. I want to be a broker. I want to be a broker. I think actually I got my opportunity because when I did the ACII. It's a bit of a claim to fame, but I won 2 awards on the ACI.
Okay.
Wow.
So I passed my ACI. I think I was 20 when I passed the ACI.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I had to do, because I didn't have any exemptions. They used to do exemptions, and I don't know if they do it now for different universities. But I had to do full, might have been 20 exams or something like that. So I had to work really hard for that, and I put everything into it, and I got these 2 awards because I got. At that time, it was you got a pass, merit, or distinction, and I think I got every single pass mark was a distinction in the end. because I just wanted to prove, my uncle was in the business, of course, naturally people, and I think that actually as well, that works in my favour because it was the opposite to nepotism. It was, we can't be shown any favourability. So I had to almost work harder, I believe. Yeah. So I had to do something to prove it. And when I got these awards, and of course I made a big song and dance about it in the office, there was these awards even we went to, and they had to give me my chance at that time, I think. Yeah. So that was when I went to broking. As the team started to grow. So when I was 20, I would say I was 25 when I got promoted to head of broking. Yeah. I think at that point we had a team of, I was probably one of five. Mm-hmm. And that was quite a big deal. That was quite nerve-wracking because these guys were all probably 40s, 50s, very, very experienced, knew exactly what they was doing, probably knew technically a lot more than me about a lot of the subjects we were talking about. But actually, everybody was good about it. Everybody kind of embraced it. So that was, and they helped me. Yeah. I was happy to ask them and say, what do you think I should do with this? And how should we do this? And how should I approach that situation? I don't think you should be scared to ask. But and I'd be asking people that were supposed to be people that actually worked in my team. But, so that was good. And then a year later was when I was made director of the company. I was promoted to the board. So then I had, obviously, as board director, but also head of broking. Then I would say not a lot of exciting stuff happened. It was just I was working, and then COVID happened. But just before COVID was when we went on the MGA drive, and that was when the ideas started to come away, and that was when really sort of things started to take off a lot more. I would say that's when the big changes started to happen. Yeah. It was great before, we was winning business, we was growing, was a very good brand, a very good marine broker. And I was head of that company, which was great. But
and just so the listeners are aware, when did you step into actually running the company?
So I became board director at 26. Yeah. We had 5, 6 directors then. So I was just one of the board.
Yeah.
I think once Lou Channing retired, maybe slightly before that, I would say I was probably. Was when COVID was 2020, so that was 5 years ago. Yeah, maybe when I was about 31, 32 was when I was really being brought in to looking at numbers, looking at figures, talking about budgets. Yeah. And actually that was when, despite being head of broking, I had the pressure of trying to do as much business as we could and keep the clients happy. But actually I didn't always necessarily know what that meant for the end result for the company and those pressures. When the pressure started to come on about this is our budget, this is how much money we've got in the bank, when should we put these forwards on the dollar rate and all of that sort of stuff and all the other things, then you're becoming a businessman as well as a insurance person. They're two different things, really. I got brought into that probably I'd say about 31, 32.
And had you been given a sort of training on that, mentored by Lou or Channing?
No, not really. I would say so I was working very, very, and still work very, very closely with John now. Yeah. We're kind of like one brain sometimes, but we work very clever and closely. And I would say that you just learn, you pick up traits, you pick up things. And I didn't know. I looked at a balance sheet. They didn't teach you balance sheets when you're 15 in school. I didn't really know what I was looking at, but you become used to these things, and the more you do it, the more you become used to it, and you start to spot, well, that looks wrong, and that looks right, or maybe we should do this, and maybe we should do that. I think again where I was lucky was, and it's credit to John again, because I've always had lots of ideas, probably plenty of stupid ideas as well, but there's been ideas, and no idea was ever shot down. No idea was that's a stupid idea. It was always, well, okay, let's explore that, and go and run with that. And it would always be, okay, go and try it, see what happens. Yeah. And I think that helped to develop that, because then you are thinking differently. If you're shut down at all times, then you stop thinking of ideas. And so that was good. So that was how I learned, I would say. I just learned on the spot, on the job. Yeah. There was no courses, there was no training. We just picked it up as we went along, really.
Good. So just so our listeners are aware, you mentioned the build out of the MGA. Mm-hmm. Talk to us about that.
The idea was born probably a long time before actually went on to do what was done. That there was an MGA, CLP was involved with an MGA back in 2010, I'm going to say. which I wasn't involved with at that time. I was still 24, 25. So they did an MGA then. There was a CLP who was involved in MGA, and actually I did some of the broking on it. I didn't. Again, it was learning on the spot. I thought, this is interesting. There's some good premium going on. This is interesting what they're doing. Something very different. And then actually the MGA was eventually sold. And I think that was good for the people involved and what happened to those guys. But I thought I always wanted to do an MGA. I was just fascinated by this idea of an MGA and that we could do things differently and build a. I think it's. Yeah, I think it's the way. It's just doing things differently. Where you're looking at books of business as a direct broker. I've only ever looked at risk by risk, and we was a small broker, so we didn't have cruise fleets, and we didn't. We had some very very good fleets, by the way, but we also had some other stuff, and there was just big bulks of premium. It was interesting. You had, I guess the MGA had brokers as clients, which was different. To be clear, we don't get involved with who the MGA deals with. We don't see their information, so that's quite important. But it was just the numbers are going around, and it was just interesting to be looking at something more like a reinsurance broker would look at things. I think programs. So I was hell bent, and I was constantly let's try this MGA, let's try that MGA, and the ideas were coming out, and then circumstantially, actually, the first MGA was born. I won't talk too much about the individual MGAs because just for, I guess, for commercial reasons, I probably shouldn't. But the first MGA was born.
Mm-hmm.
It was got to be the first of its kind, I would say. It was a tough thing to get going. First of all, we had to learn. We had to do the regulation. We had to do the financing. We had to provide the systems. We had to make sure that it was well staffed. It's not just let's go and do this and it's done. There's so much work that went into it. Building a bit exactly. It happens to be in insurance, but actually what you're doing at that point is you're doing the business. You're building the business. You're looking at numbers, working out if it's viable, working out how to make it viable if it's not viable. And then obviously along the way early on, there is challenges. There's every business, no matter what you're in, has got cash flow issues you have to start out with. And then you have the worries as who's going to support us? Is it going to work? But that worked, and it worked nicely. And quite quickly, another opportunity came along, which I decided to jump on.
Mm-hmm.
And that MGA was born fairly. That one actually had a few troubles along the way, but we got there, and that was great. And then quite quickly after that, believe it or not, this is all around sort of 2018, 19. 2020 was when the third one, I finally finished the placement on that. It was a very, very good friend of mine that run that MGA. That's another thing actually, is whilst we would set the MGAs up, we'd be involved with the MGAs. Actually, the people that ran those MGAs were the people in the MGAs. We weren't in the MGA. We're the broker.
Yeah.
Those guys ran the MGA. It was their MGA. It was their brand. They would, we would help them. We've done balance sheets. But it's their business.
It's bringing it back to that. It's all about picking the right people, not
absolutely
the right brand, which absolutely brings it back to.
It's a people industry, and you have to have, and that's. I mean, I'll come into that later, I guess. But that was it. I was lucky to be surrounded by, and these people were my friends, and I was lucky to be, have these guys that had a similar mentality to me. They wanted to go and try new things, have new ideas. And it was a bold step. And then COVID hit, which we was worried about because that changes everything.
Yeah.
And we didn't, luckily we decided to go paperless a few months before COVID actually came in. It's all about luck. You've got to have luck as well. You can't take credit for everything. You've got to have luck involved. But actually COVID changed the whole market big time. We know it has done. And actually I think it changed the market for the benefit of, particularly for the MGAs that we were involved with, I would say. And then more recent, 2 more MGA opportunities came along. Decided it was great to jump on those as well, and set both of those up as well. That was in 2022. So that was we come back from COVID, which was good. We needed some time to really get the other 3 working. because at the same time we're also running a marine broker, and you know that couldn't ever slip either. You know, we've got important clients we've got to look after over there, and that was ultimately the most important thing, is making sure clients are happy, because if your clients are not happy, then what have you got after that? So that was the most important thing. I think that was when we really started to do a bit more recruitment, because we needed more people to. Suddenly the book was growing quite quickly, and we were taking opportunities, and we don't like to turn opportunity down either. We won't take on bad opportunities. We won't force something that doesn't fit. But if there's a good opportunity, kind of got to go for it and make it work. Yeah. So we would go for, you know, whatever opportunity we could take, and the good ones worked out very, very well, and I'm pleased to say that they continue to go well. So that was 2022 was when we built the final 2 MGAs, and that was good, and they're under separate management now. There's again, I won't talk too much detail, but they're under, but it's great. We still have a very, very close relationship to these MGAs.
So you've sold these MGAs then.
Correct.
Instead of building the business and sort of selling them on.
Correct. Yeah, they wasn't built to be sold. Yeah. That wasn't the idea behind it. The idea was looking at things differently, seeing how maybe the market could work differently. And again, the MGAs, they weren't just there to make money. That wasn't the idea. The idea was to give good client outcomes again. And the client this time happened to be mainly Lloyd's brokers, but it was giving Lloyd's brokers a different way of perhaps approaching things. But yeah, they were sold, and that's worked out very, very well. I think everybody involved has been pleased. So I'm sure if they ever came on here, they'd say that they're happy with how that went. But that was good, and we're still very, very close to them. We're still, we still have a strong working relationship with those guys. So that was 2022, and then I guess they become good parts of CLP's income as well as the broker. And this is when we started to really, really grow. And you mentioned that 400% growth, that it wasn't just the MGAs, but that was a whole new revenue stream we never had before. Mm-hmm. But it led to different things as the brand got bigger in the market. We were handling good business, good premiums, but it meant that we could invest in our infrastructure, invest in our staff. We've brought in some very, very good staff now, and we always have good staff. Sorry, I should just clarify. But we've brought in some new good talent that's really adding to the brand. It's adding to what we can do on the MGAs, but also adding to what we can do for the other clients, and everything's growing quite nicely. And again, it comes back down to what you said, is that it's about having the right people around you and trusting those people. I was lucky enough that my ideas were listened to. Not all of them worked, a lot of them failed, but you learn by your mistakes as well. And I think that's what I will always make sure is, actually, if people have got an idea, I'm going to listen to your idea, and I'm going to let you try your idea, unless it's catastrophic. In my opinion, it's catastrophic, doesn't mean it is, but if I think it is, then I might maybe give another way of perhaps doing it. But I want to give people freedom to go out and have that freedom that I had to go and build themselves, because I do think that if you're overlooked, you lose motivation, and there's nothing better than having a motivated team.
Yeah. And how big is the team now?
We're a lot bigger now. The company's probably, I should know this exactly, shouldn't I? I'd say we're around about 40 people. We've got offices. We've got 3 offices around Europe, not including London, so 4 including London, and we've got an office in China as well.
Wow.
So it's grown quite a lot. That's quite nice. Yeah, it's a good team. We've really, I think this is something that I've been proud of as a leader now, or as a manager, really. What you do work-wise, what you produce work-wise, but I would have produced doing these MGAs, or produced the business I produce, or the client outcomes, whether I was a leader or not. That's not being a manager necessarily. That's just the job that I have, which is being a broker. I think when it comes to being a manager, what am I proud of? I think it's the bit I take pride is having a team that I don't know, you ask them, they might say something different, but I'd like to think they enjoy coming to work every day. Yeah. It's a happy, fun, safe environment, of course, but they enjoy being there. There's no conflict. Everybody's motivated. Everybody's working together to go for the same common goal. We're bringing in some really good younger talent as well, and we're giving them opportunities that I had. I think when I joined the industry, I think if you'd have said to me, do I think I'll end up in this position by the time at that point, actually, I was 26 when I first got to becoming a director, I'd have said no chance, because I think there was a lot of, it would have been, you only get somewhere when you've been somewhere long enough, and you sort of slowly rise through the ranks unless something happens, but you usually rise through the ranks based on experience. But that was different for me. None of that happened to me, and that's that's the opportunity I want to give to people. The right people get the right jobs. The right people have that flexibility, and that's kind of, I think, what I'd be proud of what we're building is that environment to attract good talent that want to really see where they can test themselves. You're accountable as well in an environment like that. There's nowhere to hide, but people don't want somewhere to hide. When you're hungry for
The right
you're
people,
ambitious, exactly the right people. Exactly, the right people don't want to hide, and I'd say that's one of the things I'm proud of.
Yeah,
it's interesting because I think there's a lot of conversations out there where is it best to advance your career by moving, making external moves, external promotions every 2, 3, however many years it is. But actually, your story is much more about, pick the right people at the right company where ideas are incubated, listened to, and, over time, because by your own admission, it's only really been the last sort of 5, 6 years where your career's really kind of accelerated in terms of the MGA piece. But it's having that trust built out.
Absolutely. And I suppose it's circumstantial in sometimes, for some people, they might have a toxic manager, they might have a toxic corporate culture. They might be the right person in the wrong place or the wrong person in the right place. And so it's circumstantial, I guess. Lots of people do move around and they do very well, but I've not moved. I've changed a lot. Probably I've learned a lot, pushed a lot, but yes.
But you've been in an environment that's allowed you to evolve,
encouraged it.
Encouraged it.
Yeah. And it wasn't only given to me, this opportunity. Everybody in the company could have. Anybody was given that opportunity, and still are given those opportunities. To do it.
If you had to, in terms of you as a leader, in terms of the 1 or 2 things that you've focused on in as part of that culture, what could you sort of point to in terms of fostering that environment? Because I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that would like to have similar environments, cultures, but find it very difficult to actually curate it. How have you done that? What do you think are some of the key?
I think one of the key important things is how you recruit, who you recruit. I think, again, maybe this is. I'd like to think the world is changing this way, but certainly this way I've looked at it. I didn't have any kind of qualifications when I started. This is nothing against people with qualifications. It's great that people do have, but don't just choose based on a CV. Don't just, this person's got this, done this. Meet the people, because actually, yes, you have to be intelligent. Yes, you have to have the right skills, but you have to have a synergy with the culture as well, and you have to know who's going to fit. And you could have the best CV on paper, I would say, but actually the person doesn't fit with the team, and it doesn't, or the values of the company. They might maybe they're overly ambitious and they're going to upset the culture that way. There's no I in team, or there is going to be an I in team for them. That's one of the things I'd say, is that really think about the personality and the characteristics of the individual rather than just who they are and what qualifications they have. I think that's one of the things you have to think about, and that's one of the things that I've always been careful with when I've done the recruitment. I mean, I've probably done in CLP, I've probably recruited most of the people that are there certainly recently. And I've always been careful about making sure it's the right person. Spend time, don't rush the decision, go and have the interview, perhaps, go for a coffee, get to know the person first of all before you rush that decision, because it only takes one bad egg, and it can upset the whole thing. So that would be what I'd say. It's the recruitment and how you build it. Once you've got the right people, the rest of it's quite easy. You just, they're grown ups to manage themselves. The culture gets built. Not the top down is where the culture comes from, but actually the culture is everywhere.
Yeah, good. It's all about the people.
Absolutely. And if you spot bad culture, you have to nip it in the bud quickly.
Whether people put salt in their soup. Famous Thomas Edison. He'd always final interview, take them to the restaurant, and if people would put salt in their soup before even trying it, no.
Really?
Out. Yeah.
Wow. So maybe for mine, it would have been if I put milk in before I took the tea bag out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolute no.
Yeah.
But I mean, going back to your introduction, I mean, you have achieved a lot for the number of years and your stage in life. I mean, if you were to put it down to a couple of characteristics or to highlight to us and listeners, characteristics that have really enabled you to succeed.
Yep.
What is it?
I would say ambition. You have to have ambition. If you've not got ambition, you're never going to push yourself. So ambition is definitely one of them. I would say competitiveness. It's not a bad thing to be competitive. I think the business I'm in, I'm a broker. We have to be competitive.
Yeah.
We have to work hard. We have to push hard for our clients. Yeah. And I think naturally in business, you have to be competitive. I think I've always been competitive.
Wait, you mentioned football at the beginning?
Yeah, I'd say that's probably...
We're not that competitive, West Ham, are they?
No, we're not, sadly. Not anymore. We had some glory... Well, for us, they were glory years a few years ago. I would say the competitiveness probably came in at an early age. My dad was tough on us, my sister and I, both of us. She's equally competitive. I mean, we can't hardly be in the same room together sometimes.
Oh, really?
The competitive
Are you quite close in age? Or?
She's 3 years younger, which gave me a competitive edge a little bit, although she just had to raise her game. But it was always, I don't know, he wanted us to I think he just wanted us to be the best we could ever be at everything. It was everything. There was never an excuse. You know, if I went to school, if I had a bad parents' evening, I was in big trouble. You know, and you know, I had a few bad parents' evenings probably along the way. If I played bad at football, it wouldn't be, oh, don't worry, son, you had a bad game. It would be, you know, you're almost in trouble. Yeah, you won't be playing bad again next week. It was just how it was, and that I think built this natural competitive edge. And again, you know, I joke about it about being vertically challenged, but as a kid I was as well. And so you're in a playground full of bigger kids. You have to go the extra mile to be able to be on the football pitch, be in the playground, be in those things. And I suppose that was built in from a young age that I had to push hard and elbows out.
I'm not sure if the listeners got that at the beginning about being vertically challenged. That's James sort of saying he's not the tallest in the playground.
Yeah, this is
but yeah, no, that's interesting.
I'm allowed to say it about myself. That's all right. But no, it was, and that's where the competitive nature maybe came from at first. So that's you know. So I'd say ambition, competitiveness, but also along with competitive, you've got to be a team player as well. If you're only in it for yourself, eventually you're going to alienate people. You're not going to get the best results for yourself or the company, and eventually people will spot that this is because whilst you're doing well for you, you're not the best person for the company. So competitive is great to have, but there's a fine line between competitive and selfish. And so I think you need to be competitive and ambitious, but also be a team player. And I would say that's what I was sort of am, but certainly was growing up.
And do you look for those three traits in hiring? Or
yes, want ambitious people, want competitive people, want team players. I would say yes, definitely, and work ethic. You have to work hard again, and this comes back to the recruitment we was talking about earlier, and what do you look for, and how do you build that culture. Everybody's got to be hardworking. You can't there's no room for passengers in companies, I don't think, and it only upsets because people can see if somebody's a passenger, and you don't want that anyway. You need to work hard. You need to be accountable.
You mentioned earlier on in the conversation bravery, you know, being brave to sort of take some of these risks, these, you know, whether these sort of external challenges, whether it's the financial crisis, COVID. How do you look for that in kind of your colleagues, your peers, people that you're bringing into the business?
I think you can. It's a good question, and I think it's so. Obviously, when you're meeting people for the first time, you can't really judge bravery. That's something that you don't get from an interview. If you ask somebody, "Are you brave?" they're probably going to say yes. I suspect I would, but it's something that you can see in people. I think, you know, if it's when you're spending enough time with people, you can see the ones that are willing to stand up and be counted when times are getting a bit difficult, and the ones that maybe think, oh, rather not get involved with this because actually I could go and have an early night and whatever else. And you learn that over time as to who's the ones that are going to stand up in the difficult times, despite the fact that it might be a negative outcome for them on that particular issue. But the fact that you was there and you was accountable means a lot, I think.
I mean, you mentioned where the competitive spirit came from. What about your ambition? What drives you?
Yeah, I guess that's something that maybe you're born with. I think I always knew that I wanted to do the best I can. Again, a lot of this come from probably my father growing up. It was, he had a...
Was he in the market or?
No, he actually had quite a tough... He moved to Australia as I think they called them £1 poms then.
Yeah.
I think it was a £1 and you was on a boat basically, or maybe they flew him, I don't know. But they went to Australia and they had to populate Australia basically. He was one of the families that did that. He didn't like it. He actually came back at the age of 15.
Okay.
His family stayed over there.
Oh, wow.
Yep, he had a granddad who lived in a very small rundown flat, and that was where he lived. And so he had quite a tough, he almost had to go and work at 15 to earn some money to actually buy his own dinner. And it was a very different upbringing to what I had. And I think he just didn't want us to ever, my sister and I, to be in this position where, the times can be hard, you have to. And so that was driven into us. He was almost fearful that we would end up in a situation that he ended up in, perhaps through when times were harder for him. And so it was pushed to us that we would do well. We have to do well.
Was it quite strict or?
Yeah. Mum wasn't. Mum was a soft touch. So you play mum against dad. Sorry, mum. But dad was strict on us. Yeah, he was. He was not horrible.
Yeah.
But he had high standards that we had to adhere to. Yeah. And then I lost my dad when I was 27, 28. But you've got a lot of it. A lot of your DNA is built by that time. Right?
Yeah.
Your early years are important, and I think I wouldn't at the time. I'd have felt that dad was hard on us, and it'd be much easier. I see friends that they're not getting in trouble if they're not playing well and that sort of stuff. But now I'm probably quite grateful that we had this built into. I'm saying us because I'm referring to my sister as well. So that's probably where the ambition come from, is just childhood experiences, but you're probably born with it as well, I suspect.
And was he ever worried about you not going down a somewhat traditional path of college, university, and actually starting at 16, or was he actually quite? He was. So again, obviously, my uncle was in the business. And is that from your mum's side?
Yes, it is. He's my mum's brother. Yeah. Obviously, he's my uncle. So there was a bit of comfort in that there was somebody in the business. I wasn't just going out into the wide world on my own at 16. But again, I think he was pleased that I had a job, to be honest. He wanted me to be a lawyer. He wanted me to be a doctor. And probably I wanted to. Well, actually, I still wanted to be a professional footballer at that point. But I'd started to realise that wasn't going to happen.
I still do.
Yeah, I do as well, actually, yeah. You never know. know. But I think he was probably quite proud, actually. I was a 16-year-old in a suit going up to the city. That was something that he was never. He just didn't have those opportunities. It was different. When he was 16, what he was doing, he
totally
was
different.
Probably doing a paper round to try and earn some money to
eat,
buy lunch and eat. And I was a 16-year-old going up into the city and it, as I say, it was only going to be 6 weeks at first, so it wasn't actually intended to be.
Yeah.
But I think it was positive signs that I'd done my work experience there. They knew me, and they'd decided to make the phone call. And it wasn't actually my uncle that made that call, I don't believe. But they decided that they wanted me to join the company. And then after the 6 weeks, they'd asked that I join the company. So they was all positive signs that it was hopefully going in the right direction.
And looking back kind of retrospectively in your career, I mean, if you were to think of greatest failure, well, firstly, how do you, some people don't see failure as failure and it's all just learning. How do you approach failure, and what's been your greatest?
It's all been downhill since those distinctions then.
That's it. Yeah, it's gone horribly wrong since then. Well, I did have one failure, which probably doesn't count as a professional failure, but actually, believe it or not, when I was 16 and I joined Tysers, I'd got this job. I was 2 weeks in, it was going great. I managed to set fire to the toaster, making hot cross buns. And unfortunately, the toaster started smoking. The fire alarms went off.
The raisins.
It was, yeah. I think I'd overcut the cross part and it was touching the side. I was only qualified to make tea at that point. The hot cross buns started burning. The fire alarms went off. The whole building was evacuated. We only had one floor at that time. The whole 12 floors were evacuated. 2 fire alarms were called as per protocol. And the office smelt for probably about 2 weeks. And then the very clever IT guy at that time, using the programs we had at that time, managed to make a picture of me holding hot cross buns, and they was all put around. So that was probably my greatest failure. But no, my I would say, so first of all, how do I approach failure is I think you have to learn from it. Mm-hmm. You have to. Everybody makes mistakes. We work in insurance. If people didn't make mistakes, we wouldn't have a job. We actually need mistakes because that's what our industry is built on. But you have to learn from those mistakes. And it's not wrong to make a mistake if it's an intentional mistake or it's gross negligence or you shouldn't. But accidental, unforeseen mistakes, they happen. I think took me quite a long time to learn, and probably my biggest failure I look back on, but I've learned from it, was my unwillingness to trust others. Mm-hmm. At first, I was because I never had anywhere to pass work when I was younger. I had to do it myself, and then I only trusted myself for a long time. Mm-hmm. And then I was put into this leadership position, and suddenly I had to learn to delegate. I had to learn to trust other people, and it didn't come easy. And I don't think it comes easy for anybody. I think everybody will find it hard to delegate, and it's natural to find it hard because you've always done work yourself, and suddenly you're going to trust someone else, and actually you're liable for the results that they produce, and naturally you sometimes, and also as well, it's easier to do it yourself, and a lot of time it is easier to do it yourself at first, but it's not easy to do it yourself the next 20 times, and so invest that time, invest the effort into delegating. And I started to delegate, and actually, again, this is where again, you have to be around the right people. And actually, it was John that pointed it out to me. He said, "You've got to you're going to kill yourself because I
can't do it all."
I was working 7 a.m. till, this was before children, 7 a.m. till 9 p.m. and I was tired all the time, and I was working at weekends as well, and I was pushing it. You've got to delegate. You've got to delegate. And then I did start to delegate, and actually, I realised that actually that worked out all right. And I think that's now where I've learned from it. I'm talking about the team. I'm really, really proud of the team that we've got. I'm proud of what we're building. I'm proud of all of that. And that's because I'm giving them those trusts now. And so I would say my biggest single failure was the time it took me to adapt to delegation, adapt to being a leader.
I think that's a really good point for, people who may be listening and wanting to move into leadership roles. Because I think delegation is a key thing to master. And what about resilience? I mean, do you think resilience can be learnt, or do you think it's actually something that's quite innate?
So I think that's something that, again, I think that's a nature one. Mm-hmm. I think I guess it could be nurtured, because I suppose if you're in an environment where you have to build resilience, then that's going to build it. But I think you have to have some natural resilience as well, and that's. I guess that comes down to the competitiveness as well, is never giving up. Never, ever, ever just give up. Sometimes it is a lost cause and you have to realise when it's a lost cause, but don't give up too early. There will be setbacks. Nothing's easy. We had setback after setback with the MGAs, so many setbacks with the company and things that we've done. Mm-hmm. But if we just gave up, then it wouldn't be where it is now. A lot of the time it's much easier to walk away. Of course it is. But if you walk away, you'll never achieve anything. You've got to have resilience, and I think that's a good point.
Obviously, the market's continuing to evolve and adapt. What do you think some of the biggest challenges are for leaders in the industry and insurance are today and will be over the next 5 years or so?
I think not just the insurance industry, but the world wide is changing a lot quickly, very, very quickly. AI is obviously the subject that's everywhere, and I think this is the biggest challenge. Whether it's a challenge, it's opportunity as well, but it's also a challenge. We have to manage it carefully. I think it's something that we will all embrace. I think we have to. If you don't embrace it, then you're probably going to get left behind, I think. But it has to be embraced in the right way. We don't want it to take over the world. We don't want it to take over jobs. We don't want it to stop us thinking. That's the other thing that worries me, is that the less we think, the more computers think, the less we think, and the less innovation that we come up with as humans. I think if we trust computers to think all the time for us, if we trust computers to type an email for us, my handwriting, I can hardly handwrite these days because I just don't do it. It's something that I've certainly got my eye on. I think there will be maybe a cycle where too many people are too reliant upon AI, and actually people are looking for a human touch again, and that will be a USP in itself. But certainly in the near future, I think the biggest challenge that we need to be careful of is AI, and how it's used. I think using the right way, it's going to be a great tool, but just we need to make sure. And I think as well, sorry, just on that point, it's not really AI, but the other thing, I think this was COVID changed the London market a little bit, where people started to communicate electronically. Mm-hmm. I think the culture, maybe perhaps of some younger generations coming in, the culture is to do things social media. It's the technology they had that we didn't have growing up. So naturally, communication can be over email, can be text, can be WhatsApp, and that's great. That's fine. There's a place for that. It's quicker, but don't lose those relationships. Don't lose that face to face. Don't lose that communication. I wouldn't have been able to build half of what I've built if I didn't have those personal relationships, and I've made some good friends along the way. Mm-hmm. Really, like in the market, I never would have met these people, but they're actual, real, true friends. And they're business associates, but these are friends. And there's the market's great. There's different people from different walks of life, different countries, different backgrounds, different opinions, different cultures, and it's great. And you'll learn a lot, but essentially, from a business point of view, if we lose those relationships, we lose that building, then what are we trying to do here?
Yeah,
so
brings it back to people, which is why we all sort of love this market, because
absolutely,
people buy from people.
Absolutely, and people want to buy from people. Yeah. How frustrating is it when you want to talk to in your personal life, and all you can get hold of is a press 1 for this and press 4 for that. Just press 1 for a human, please. And then but that's again, I think it's important that humans deal with humans.
Yeah, no, definitely. And just sort of penultimate question, any advice, or what advice would you give to young people that are coming into the market now, or are in kind of their 20s on, maybe even in management position, let alone leadership positions, but have aspirations to get to the C-suite? What advice would you give to younger people?
So I suppose the advice would kind of sum up the themes that we've had here, which is you've got to be dependable, you've got to have ambition, you've got to trust yourself, you've got to trust your ideas. Don't be scared to speak up. Mm-hmm. If you're in the wrong culture that you can't speak up, maybe you're in the wrong place. But also, again, back to that theme that I said just now, is don't make sure you're building relationships, because relationships is what this business is built on, and just make sure you're building those relationships with people. But that would be the general things I would say, is to make sure you're out there, make sure you're meeting people.
Yeah. Well, James, it's been brilliant having you on this podcast.
Thank you.
A really interesting story, and thanks for being generous with your time and also sharing all that insight. We end by asking our guests with a question of what song they listen to if they're needing, motivation to rally themselves up. You spend all day rallying the troops of where you are. What's your go-to song that you turn to?
That is a good question. So if I was going to pick a song, well, I've probably got quite an eclectic mix of music, actually. 80s, 90s. The Arctic Monkeys was a big band for me growing up.
Yeah.
Oasis was a big band, Coldplay. But also we had some UK garage music as well. So there's all different types of music. But probably if I had to pull back to something, it's going to have to be Oasis.
Oh, yeah, good.
Probably Roll With It, I suspect.
Okay, I like it.
It's just a good music. It's just good music, good sounds, but also maybe it's quite appropriate. You've got to roll with it.
I think it's,
I like it.
That's very good. And in the themes of what we're talking about here.
Absolutely.
James, thank you very much.
Thank you. We won't get you to sing it. Don't worry.
That's good.
Cool.
Thanks.
Thank you.